spend your days just waiting for your next meal? Do you think about food all the time? Are you always wondering whether what you're eating is too calorie dense or too high in fats or in sugar? Do you get excited when you think about the food that you're going to be eating throughout the day? These could all be signs that you have an obsession with food. But don't worry, having a food obsession is actually pretty common, and I'm going to give you some ways to get out of it. What is an obsession with food? It's totally fine to enjoy eating or to look forward to having certain foods, but when food starts to become overly present in your life, when you start having all your thoughts revolve around food, or when you start fixating on what you can and can't eat and what you're going to eat, you may have an obsession with food. This can manifest in different ways. You could just be thinking about food obsessively all the time, or you could be thinking about all of the effects that what you eat is going to have on your body, or you could even feel food guilt when you eat certain foods. And if you're more interested about that, I made a video about it right here. So basically, if you feel like food and everything around food occupies your mind constantly, then you may have a food obsession. So why are you obsessed with food? In most cases, if you're obsessed with food, it's because you've been restricting your eating in some way. I'm sure you can look back into your past and think of a time when having a food that wasn't available to you only made you crave it more. For example, if you prevent a child from having cookies and you never ever have cookies at home and there's like a ban on cookies, then chances are that child will talk about cookies and think about cookies often and crave cookies. And when they go to a friend's house and they're allowed to have cookies, then they're going to eat a ton of cookies. But if the child had been allowed to have a cookie once in a while, then the cookie wouldn't seem so special and they probably wouldn't be as obsessed with it. On a more extreme note, a study actually demonstrated that restricting your food intake drastically could lead to food obsession. And if you're interested in my sources, as usual, they are in my blog post in the description. During World War II, 36 men took part in a nearly year-long experiment on the psychological and physiological effects of starvation. During 6 months, they ate a semi-starvation diet of 1,570 calories a day and continued to be physically active in the lab. Beyond the drastic physical effects of the experiment, the psychological effects were dramatic. Being food deprived made the men obsessed with food. They would constantly talk, dream, and fantasize about food. After a certain period, they were allowed to eat without restriction, which led to extreme overeating in many participants, despite having been warned against it. So even if you don't go as far as starving yourself, if you're constantly restricting and policing your food intake, this could be why you feel that you're so obsessed with food. How to end your obsession with food. So now that you know what food obsession is and why you suffer from it, here are some ways to get rid of it. The first thing you need to do is to let go of your food restrictions. You really need to give yourself permission to eat any food you want. Now, this may seem scary at first. You may be thinking, well, if I have the possibility to eat any food I want, won't I just only crave junk food and only have cookies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Well, to be honest, you might do that for a brief period. If you've been banning certain foods from your house your entire life, then you may feel the need to binge on them once they become authorized again. However, I can guarantee that if having like ice cream, cookie, chocolate dinners every night for the rest of your life seems appealing now, it won't be after you had it a few nights in a row. When you're allowed to have a food whenever you like, then the novelty factor wears off and you don't crave it as much anymore. This is a natural phenomenon that is called habituation. It's also super important for you to get out of the all or nothing mentality, which will be the type of thinking that will push you to finish an entire bag of chips after you've only had a couple of them, because you think, oh well, I ruined my diet now, might as well have the entire bag. Again, if you're more interested in the all or nothing mentality, I made a video about it right here. If you allow yourself to have the foods that you want without restricting or regulating, then you really won't feel the need to binge on them later on. While you move away from this restrictive eating, I really suggest turning to a more mindful way of eating. Mindful eating is a technique used to regain control over your eating habits. It means being aware of what you eat and eating consciously in a healthy and balanced way, all while being fully aware of what you're eating. So of the food's taste, texture, the pleasure you have in eating, the way you chew, taking the time to eat slowly, taking the time to pause in between bites, and the goal is really to recreate this connection between your mind and your body. Mindful eating should also be done without any other distractions and solely focusing on your food. This way you will be able to learn to listen to your hunger cues and to know when to continue on eating and when to stop. And if you're more interested in mindful eating, then I made a video about it here. Another thing you need to do is to find comfort in other ways than in food. Finding comfort in food is totally natural. It's something that even babies do. However, food shouldn't be the only way you have of coping with your emotions. You should really try to get to the root cause of the problem and address that instead of treating the symptoms with food. Now, I know that this is easier said than done, so if you're not able to get rid of the problem, then try to deal with it in other ways than food, such as going on a walk, exercising, hanging out with friends, talking on the phone, watching funny movies, playing music, listening to music, whatever you love doing. There are so many other things than food to be obsessed with. And also, it's really important to acknowledge your feelings, because sometimes you just eat comfort food because you just don't want to deal with what you're feeling. So you really need to do that. But what if I don't restrict and I'm still food obsessed? First of all, you may be restricting without even realizing it. If you actively count your calories or track your macros or have a salad after having a huge brunch just because you need to balance it out but you're starving, all of this is a form of restriction. You might also be wanting to restrict your food intake, trying to be more careful with what you eat, but end up giving in and just eating whatever you want and then feeling guilty for it. That also can count as a form of restriction for your brain. Another option might be that you've eaten high calorie, high fat, high processed, high sugar foods all your life without ever eating healthy and balanced meals. In this situation, you might see eating as a hobby or something to do out of boredom or as a comforting routine. And this could be the cause of your food obsession. In this case, I suggest learning the basics about nutrition and learning how to create healthy and balanced plates. And I have a video about that here. And to do all of that without feeding into diet culture. And then once you've acquired this general knowledge, you can go about with a mindful and intuitive eating. But like I've said previously in previous videos, I don't think that a mindful and intuitive eating can work for everyone right away. If you have absolutely no notion of nutrition, then it just won't work. If you've been used to eating junk food all your life, then intuitive eating for you will be just continuing on eating junk food. So really try to do that, to learn the basics. I have a ton of videos and even articles to help you do that. And yeah, in short, you may have a food obsession if food is present in your life in a way you can't escape, if you feel like it's all you ever think about, and if you even feel a little bit addicted to food. It's important to rid your feelings of food guilt and the all or nothing mentality and learn to ditch diet culture. And I really suggest turning to a more mindful and intuitive way of eating instead. Letting go of food restrictions and regulations can feel very overwhelming. So if you feel that way, don't hesitate to be accompanied by a nutrition professional to help you navigate these issues. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like it and subscribe, and see you on my next one. Bye.